Okay, about 4 after here, so why don't we go ahead and get started. Tonight's presentation is going to be on the 2020 U.S. Lacrosse Boys Youth Rule Changes. My name is Rick Lake. I'm the staff liaison for U.S. Lacrosse for the Rules Committee. Tonight we're going to have Walt Munsey, who's the high school and youth national rules interpreter, and David Seibin, who's the chairman of the Youth Rules Committee, and he's also the voting member for U.S. Lacrosse at the National Federation of High Schools. Last night's presentation, we had all the high school changes. Tonight, we're going to show some of those same changes, along with some which are youth specific. And again, I just want to take an opportunity to thank the Federation for their time and efforts in working with us to try to harmonize things as best we can so that lacrosse can grow in a great way. So with that, I'm going to hand things over to David, who's going to talk a little bit about himself, his lacrosse background, and then after that, I'll ask Walt just to introduce yourself and tell the folks a little bit about yourself. So David, you want to go ahead and say hi?
Good evening. As I said last night, and I've said many times, my participation on the U.S. Lacrosse and Federation Rules Committees has been the greatest reward, has been the most rewarding thing I've done in my lacrosse career. I officiated for 38 years. I've played U.S. Lacrosse for 3 or 4 years. Rick?
Yeah, about 4 years.
But again, it's a great honor to be here, and I still enjoy this. So it's good to work with Rick and Walt and the people who are so dedicated to keeping the game where it is and making it even better and safer.
Walt, do you want to go ahead and say hi?
Certainly. Say hello to everybody. My name is Walt Munsey, longtime official, probably over 50 years with 1 year experience. But a lot of work and time and effort going into the rules. But I will say this: reffing is one thing. Trying to make a rule is a completely difficult challenge. There's so many things. It sounds easy. You're just gonna think you're gonna write something up, and when you get back home, you have to unravel what you think you did. But I will tell you that U.S. Lacrosse on our committee, just so you all know, that there's a lot of input in terms of making these rules and formatting the U.S. Lacrosse youth program. We hear from a number of coaches and officials. The surveys go out, and we respond and read every one of those. And we also, aside from that, we have a lot of input from the medical side, reporting the various injury rates, the types of injuries, positions that players are in when they receive the injury. So, of course, a lot of things go into play when we're making these rule sets. We also understand that not everyone uses these rules, but we feel that it's a set of rules that's based on best practice. A lot of tournaments, I know when you're all going to ref, you go to the person that's running the tournament and you ask them, what are the rules we're playing by today? And hopefully in time, U.S. Lacrosse will be the set, and you won't have to even ask that question. So with that, Dave, you're on, and let's get the show rolling.
All right, so let's jump in and start talking about the new rule changes for 2020.
So this has been a quiet year for rule changes. There are 1.5 major changes and a lot of cleanup. The first change we'll talk about is for 8 and 10U levels only. On initial possession, either after a face-off at 10U or after a play resuming after a goal for 8U where there are no face-offs, the team is required to attempt one pass before they can go to the goal. So if they win a face-off or have an initial possession after a goal, there must be at least one pass attempt before the team can go to the goal. So what's a pass attempt? It's an attempt to move the ball from one player to another. Pass may or may not be called. It may caught. It may result in a ground ball. And if that team regains possession after the ground ball, that would be considered the pass attempt, and then the team could go to the goal. So again, at 10U, that's after initial possession after a face-off. At 8U, that's after play resuming after a goal, which happens without a face-off at that level.
And I remember, Dave, when we were in Vegas doing the clinic, the question came up about, does this mean on every possession they pick up a loose ball during play? But again, you clarified it. It's after a face-off or after a restart after a goal, if there is no face-off. So that's the time we're talking about, not every possession during the game.
Right. So a possession change, for instance, a goalie attempts to clear the ball. The pass is intercepted by an attackman who shoots the ball into the goal. That's a legal play. No pass attempt required there. Only the initial possession after a face-off or after a restart after a goal. Thank you all. Okay. I think this is a clarification change. We go to a mercy rule in the 12U and 14U levels, which matches the federation rule. If the goal differential reaches 12 goals in the second half, we go to a running clock. No impact at 8 and 10U because those games are already running clocks all the way through. So at 12 and 14U, 12 goal differential in the second half, we go to a running clock.
And that starts with the next face-off whistle. Or if it was a starting a play without a face-off, it starts then. Not after the goal reaching the 12 goal difference, but upon the next restart.
Next slide, Rick. Okay, this is the major change that applies also at the federation level. This will carry down only to 14 and 12U. This does not apply to the lower levels, only 14 and 12U. And that is effectively what you've seen at the NCAA for the last 5 or 6 years now, the quick restart after a turnover on the field. Okay, I'm sorry, Rick. I see you're changing the first line there. I'm going to start a little bit lower than that. We have a turnover by a violation, a crease violation, face-off violation, or even a quick end line turnover where a quick restart is possible on the field. If the offensive player, the player entitled to the ball, picks up the ball and is ready to go, and the officials are ready to go, we don't have to wait for defensive players to be 5 yards away from the ball carrier. We do have to make sure that any teammates of the ball carrier are 5 yards away. We don't want to have this lead to the hidden ball trick or the armadillo type play. So no offensive player can be within 5 yards of the ball carrier on the restart, but a defensive player can be there. The intent of this is to speed up the restarts when a team is entitled to a quick restart. So we have a crease violation. The violator has to drop the ball. The goalie can pick it up, and he's entitled to an instant whistle. The defender can be within 5 yards on the restart, but he has several obligations in order to avoid a penalty. Number one, he must step aside and allow the ball carrier a clear path to his goal. He can do that by backing straight up and creating a 5 yard separation, or just stepping to the side and allowing the ball carrier a clear path to the goal. Number two, he may not engage the ball carrier until there has been at least a 5 yard separation between that defender and the ball carrier. So, or the ball, if you want to call it that way, if the ball were to change hands. So we have a face-off violation, for instance. We award the ball to White, and White, number one, picks up the ball. The blue face-off defender is still right there. We're going to give White a quick whistle, assuming that the official's in position. We'll give White a quick whistle for a restart, and that blue defender is obligated to step aside and allow the ball carrier a straight path to the goal. and he also must establish, as you'll see in some of the clips coming up, must establish a 5-yard separation between himself and the ball before he can engage the ball carrier. This does not occur coming off of a timeout or a restart where time is not of the essence, where a quick restart is not a huge advantage. This wouldn't happen if we had a period that started with the team in possession where the teams are coming out of a huddle. So this only applies on a quick restart, where a quick restart is an advantage off of a violation or maybe an end line turnover. It does not apply if we're doing a restart in the substitution area. In that case, we're going to take the time to move the player, the ball carrier, 5 yards onto the field. And since we're already slowing things down there, we want to make sure all players are 5 yards away at that point. We don't want to have a defender that's able to sneak in from a corner or something to that effect. So it does not apply coming off a timeout, and it does not apply with the restart where we've moved the ball away from the sideline in the substitution area.
Dave, the important point, this is a huge change in a number of respects. But I think down the road, everyone will adjust, and players and officials and coaches and hopefully parents, but I can't guarantee that. But what we want to make sure we're doing here, we want to be quick, but we don't want to hurry. So if there's any situation that you feel you need to take your time, then that's important to do so. Where you still need to control the game, you can't let the players run the game and run out ahead of you. They're going to be all heck bent to get going, and they may restart before you blow the whistle. Well, you're going to have to blow the whistle a couple times and bring them back to where they're supposed to start. So they can't take off on a running start, either coming off the end line or in the middle of the field. And it happens a lot in the middle of the field. That's where you'll see it. They want to hustle straight down to the goal. So control the game. And there are times you may be able to, especially at the younger level, to remind people of their 5-yard responsibilities. And when you talk to both teams before the game, it's another good opportunity to review that with them, that we do have the new restart, but these are the restrictions that they have to abide by. So with that, we can move on.
So, talking them through this, especially early in the season, will be important. A couple things to be aware of, and where we had some issues when the NCAA started doing this, is we need to keep in mind that if a defender does not create that 5-yard separation and follows the ball carrier down the field, the violation may not occur until 40 or 50 yards downfield from the restart. So especially in a two-man crew, both officials need to be in good communication and need to be aware of the situation, and need to be aware if the 5-yard separation had been created or not. Do we need to pay attention and make sure that if this defender engages 40 or 50 yards down the field, that's when the flag comes out. So it's something we need to talk about in our pregame and communicate as well as we can on the field in real time with this. Rick, you want to?
Can you talk about the substitution area and also the defensive players giving up a direct path to the goal?
You already brought this up, Dave, about the substitution area. We have no player, offense or defense, can be within 5 yards. So in that area, the substitution area, we want to make sure we have a clean restart. We're moving the player inbounds 5, and we're also making sure that both offense and defense are at 5 yards distance as well. If you don't do that, you're going to invite a lot of trouble. People coming in behind you, and that could be a mess. So that's our controlled area. Rick, was there another point you wanted to make? Oh, you have these.
Okay, so here we have a restart that occurs on an end line out of bounds. The red dot represents the ball carrier. The black dot represents the defender. The goal seems to have disappeared, Rick.
I'm seeing it on my side.
You do? Okay. Maybe I have a bad contrast. Okay, so in this case, again, the red is the ball carrier, the black is the defender, and this is a good, clean restart. At the time of the whistle, the defender is within 5 yards of the ball, but he steps aside, allows the ball carrier a clear path to the goal, allows the 5 yard separation to create before he comes back in and engages. So this is a good play on the part of the defender, no violation here. Steps aside, allows the 5 yard separation, and then comes in and plays.
Yeah, I'm not seeing the goal area. There we go.
Now this one is not a good one. In this case, the defender is still within 5 yards of the ball on the restart, but he does not step aside to allow a clear path to the goal. There is never a 5 yard separation, and there's an engagement when the ball carrier is on the way to the goal, and at that point your flag should come out. So this is not an acceptable defender action on a restart. When are these difficult? On over and back violations, when we have a couple issues. We have an offensive player who wants to take advantage of a quick restart here, and we may have an issue with defenders coming from the backside of the midfield line, being within 5 yards on the restart. I think we have a clip we'll show on this later, and never allowing that 5 yard separation to develop before playing. So that's one to be aware of. The other one are face-off violations where the face-off player wants a quick restart and may be aggressive about picking up the ball. If the defender does his job and moves aside to allow a direct path to the goal for the ball carrier, and the ball carrier, instead of heading towards the goal, decides to head directly at the defender, no violation on the defender will occur in this case. In fact, if the ball carrier is too aggressive, puts his head down and spears the defender, or runs over a stationary defender, we could have a personal foul on the ball carrier. So again, the defender, if he steps aside and the ball carrier chooses to run directly at him, that would be no violation on the defender and could be a foul on the ball carrier. So here we have a good restart, either on an over and back violation or a face-off. The defender slides aside, steps aside, allows a clear path to the goal, waits for the 5 yard separation, and then comes in and engages the player. So this is a good, clean restart on the part of the defensive half. No violations here. All right, this one's not so good. The defender does not step aside, doesn't necessarily impede the ball carrier, but never creates a 5 yard separation before he re-engages down near the crease area. So here's the case where we have a restart up at midfield, and then the violation actually occurs down near the crease area when the defender engages and there never was a 5 yard separation. Okay, Walt, do you have anything to add on that, on the restarts, or Rick?
One thing is, if a player is initially further away than 5 yards on a restart, he doesn't have to get out of his way. He can defend him on the whistle.
Good point. So on the whistle, the defender is 6 yards away, and on the immediately after the whistle moves into within 5 yards and plays defense. That's fine, because the 5 yard separation was there on the whistle. So that's a good point, Walt. Thank you. All right, ready to move to stick checks. We're going to ask officials to conduct up to 4 random stick checks on each team during a game at the 12 and 14U levels. As in Federation and other levels, head coaches may request stick checks on specific players at the 12 and 14U level. At 8 and 10U levels, we will not conduct random stick checks, and we will not accept a coach's request for an inspection. But if we see a stick that looks like it's potentially illegal or an obvious problem, we'll notify that player's coach that it should be adjusted. So again, random stick checks like we would do in high school at the 12 and 14U level, not at 8 and 10U. Ready, Rick? Okay. At 8 and 10U levels, at the lower levels, a player will serve penalty time, but his team will not play shorthanded. He can be substituted for as soon as he's removed from the game. So again, only at the lower levels, 8 and 10U, teams will play at full strength after a penalty. The player incurring the penalty must be removed from the game, and he's got to sit out at least what his penalty time would have been before he comes back in the field. But he can be substituted for immediately, and the teams are playing at full strength. No man up or man down at 8 and 10U. Next, Rick.
I'll just chime in. Sort of the rationale behind this is at the 8U and 10U levels, there's more of a focus on small ball and fundamentals, as in at the 12U and 14U level, it's preparing kids for high school lacrosse.
Okay. All right. This is another major change, and Walt described this really well at the seminars this weekend. The committee felt that we could have a high hit that resulted in a 2-minute foul. The player kind of gets clocked and he's down on the ground with a cross check or a high hit to the head, 2-minute violation. But if a player has a stick that's close to legal, does a couple face-offs, and now it measures 5 3/4, that's a 3-minute penalty. Just didn't seem quite right. So the adjustment is that all stick penalties, it's also a simplification of the stick penalties, all illegal cross penalties are 2 minutes. Doesn't matter whether it's a deep pocket, doesn't matter whether the stick's pinched and the ball doesn't come out. All illegal stick penalties are 2 minutes non-releasable. And in all cases, the stick can be corrected after the penalty and returned to the game. If a stick is corrected and returned to the game, it is the responsibility of the player or coach to make sure that stick's legal before it comes back in. They're not going to ask or not going to be granted a reinspection before they come back onto the field. It's up to them to make sure it's legal.
So Dave, ref, my player has 20 seconds in his penalty. Can you check his stick? So make sure it's legal?
No, sir, that's up to you. If I check it and it's illegal again, it's going to cost him another 2 minutes. So, no, sir, that's up to you.
We check sticks before the game.
So, again, coach's responsibility, coaches or players' responsibility to make sure that stick's legal before it comes in. So, if you have a stick that's a little narrow and he puts a softball in it or works it out like you see the face-off, pulls it out like you see the face-off players doing before each face-off, and he wants to bring it back in, that's fine. A stick that measures too short, if they want to replace the handle and bring it back into the game, they're welcome to do that. So no sticks will remain at the table after a stick violation anymore. All sticks can be corrected and brought back in. And again, all the penalties, 2 minutes, non-releasable, whether it's for a deep pocket or any other violation. This does not apply to
strings, David.
Strings? Yeah, go ahead, Walt.
It does not apply to strings that are beyond 2 inches. We tell them to, get it out, get it fixed. End caps, same thing. We're talking about the major measurements, not the hanging strings.
If you have, you see the strings that are longer than 2 inches and you ask the player to cut it after an inspection and he does not, that's not a 2-minute penalty. That would be, he comes back in the game, he hasn't corrected the strings that you've asked him to correct. That would be a 1-minute unsportsmanlike conduct. Same goes for the case if you ask a player for a stick to inspect it. 21, don't touch your stick. Could you hand it to me, please? And he yanks the strings or jams it into the ground to try and widen the head. That's a 1-minute unsportsmanlike conduct foul right there, non-releasable. And you're going to go ahead and measure the stick anyway. And if it's found to be illegal, you're going to add the 2-minute penalty to that. These penalties apply to the fouling out of players also. So if a stick is found to be illegal and the player brings it back in later and you do a check on it and it's illegal again, he's got 4 minutes of penalty time there. Rick, what's the foul out in the youth level? Is it 3 personal fouls?
2 personal fouls or 5 minutes?
3 or 5.
Or 5 minutes. All right. So he's got 2 of his 3 personal fouls there and 4 of his 5 minutes. Ready for next slide? Okay. We noticed that in the book there were the penalty for throwing across was in 2 different places with 2 different penalties, but no explanation of the difference. It appeared in both the illegal procedure area and unsportsmanlike conduct. So we clarified this. If a player throws a cross at a ball, the shot ball, for instance, or a pass ball, he intentionally throws his cross at the ball, the goalie's out of the crease, for instance, and there's a shot and the goalie throws his stick at the ball, or he throws his stick at another player, could be a teammate or an opponent, throws his stick at a coach or referee. Those are personal fouls. And depending on the severity, there could be 1, 2, or 3 minutes. If he throws his coach at an opponent and throws his stick at an opponent and hits him with the stick, that probably is a 3-minute non-releasable foul. But that's a personal foul. If a player's on the sideline and he wants a stick exchange, and instead of handing his stick to his coach in the coach's area, he tosses it, that's a technical foul. That would not be a personal foul. Same if he leaves the field and he's frustrated and he kind of throws his stick on the ground and he's not near any other player and he hasn't put anyone in danger, he just throws his stick on the ground in frustration. That would be a technical foul if we see it. We want to be careful. If we have an accidental release of a stick, a player's diving on the ground and as he hits the ground, the stick comes out of his hand. That's not what we're talking about. We're looking for the intentionally thrown stick. A player's near the end line, jumps up to try and catch a pass that's over his head, and the stick comes out of his hand a little bit. It may slip out of his hand, and he drops it. We're not talking about the player that throws the stick 10 yards in the air. That's the personal foul. But if it just slips out of his hand and it seems to be accidental and incidental, that would not be a foul. Well,
So if he scores a field goal with his cross, I think we're looking at unsportsmanlike, right?
yes.
Good.
And these are non-releasable unsportsmanlike
Yeah,
fouls.
we tried to, clean up the book because it was actually listed in the Federation book as any rate. It was listed in 2 places. So this is an attempt to kind of clarify it, separate it, and have it make more sense.
Ready for the next one, Rick? Okay, some clarifying definitions. No rule change here, but we've clarified definitions. A player is considered to be in possession of the ball if he can perform any of the normal functions of lacrosse, that is, carry, cradle, pass, or shoot the ball. If a player is in possession of the ball, then his team is to be considered in possession of the ball. A couple of years ago, we clarified the penalty for say a technical foul while a ball was in flight from one player to another. And in doing so, we left a little ambiguity in some of these definitions. So this is just a cleanup in that direction. No real rule change here, but just a cleanup in the definitions.
Example there would be if you had a pass from player A1 to A2, and whilst the ball was in the air, there was a push or interference of some sort. And if we really had a mix-up situation at the end of that kind of a play. So this is what we cleaned up. If the ball is caught, the play on is over. If the ball is not caught, we award possession for the loose ball push. So that's how this all comes to play here.
Okay. Okay. Definition of a takeout check. Takeout checks are not allowed at any level of youth play. I mean, a 14U and all the way down, takeout checks are not allowed. We define a takeout check as an excessive body check in which the player lowers his head or shoulder And the intent of the player is to put his opponent on the ground. So if you see a body check, which at a higher level may be considered a clean check, but a player's lowered his head and shoulder and has used the force and clearly has the intent to put the opponent on the ground, that is a takeout check, and that's an illegal body check. Or actually, I take that back. Takeout checks are unnecessary roughness, and we have to keep in mind that at the youth level, all unnecessary roughness penalties are non-releasable. So takeout checks are unnecessary roughness. They are non-releasable fouls. What we're looking for with legal body contact is for the checking player to be in an upright position. So contact is allowed chest to chest, hip to hip, but the checking player should be in an upright position. If he lowers his shoulder with the intent to put his opponent on the ground, that's a takeout check, and it's an unnecessary roughness penalty. Walt?
No, I think you described it well, and I think the picture shows it right there. So that's what we want to keep control and get these kind of checks out of the game.
Rick? Okay, in the middle we have a good body check. Player's more or less upright. He's got his hands in a leading position, but there's no apparent thrusting here, no unnecessary roughness, as far as no punching with the gloved hand. But this is a check delivered with the body in an upright position, more or less chest to chest. On the left side, we have
Your sound broke down.
an obvious cross check.
Yeah.
In the face and out of the way, and that would be an illegal body check on the ball carrier. So the one in the middle is good, left and right sides are not. Anything to add, Doctor?
No, the one in the middle, obviously, if he makes initial contact and rides up through and high, then you have a different situation. Then that contact could become legal. But as far as this particular picture is concerned, it looks good. The other one on the player upright, but you can see with his free arm throwing the flipper out there, knocking the defender right over, and the one on the left putting the guy down on the ground and kind of finishing him off while he is down. Can't do that.
Okay. One of the things we do at the youth level is we take some of the suggestions we get or some of the rules proposals we get, and we put them out there as suggested experimental rules for you to try during the season. As a coach or an administrator, if you want to put some of these rules or implement some of these rules on an experimental basis, we welcome that, and we would hopefully look forward to some feedback from you on how those experimental rules went. So we've got a couple of them this year. The mercy rule is now at the 12 and 14U levels, 12 goal differential. What we would look for is for you to experiment with a mercy rule of a lesser number of goals, perhaps 6 goals or more. And then in that case, with the experimental rule, if the differential reaches 6 goals, the coach of the team that's behind has the option to take possession of the ball after a goal in lieu of a face-off. So that's the first one. Another one that we'd like you to consider experimenting with is the hockey-style misconduct foul, and that would be where a player has kind of lost his cool. The team is playing under control, and the team may be as frustrated with this player as you as an official are. So the experimental rule would be to allow officials to assess a misconduct penalty where the penalized player has to sit out of the game for 5 minutes, but he may be substituted for and the team does not play shorthanded. If you've seen hockey, you know what this is. Same at indoor lacrosse. Another experimental rule where we've been our surveys have been deadlocked 50-50 for the last several years is whether or not to eliminate the automatic stalling during the last 2 minutes of regulation play when the score differential is 4 goals or less. If you want to experiment with playing the last 2 minutes of the game the way you did the first 46 or however long your game is, depending on the level. We look forward to comments you have on that. There's a lot of debate about this, but the numbers keep coming in right around 50-50. So there's really not enough push for us to consider changing that rule yet. The other one that's come up, and it's even been discussed at the NCAA level, is that a play would not end on a penalty. So if we have a low score, say we have a one goal differential, the team that is man down is fouled with a few seconds left in the game. Instead of letting the clock run out there, we would extend, under the experimental rule, we would extend the game for the length of the penalty and give them a chance to tie it up. This probably has a lot of changes that would go along with it. It would add a lot to the rule book, but it's been a proposal that seems to be gaining momentum, and it's maybe worth giving it a shot. And the final experimental rule that we've put out there for 2020 is to prohibit intentional body-to-body contact during loose ball situations. So no body checks would be allowed when the ball's on the ground or loose. So body checking would be allowed only when a player has possession of the ball. It's something that the management at US Lacrosse would like us to consider at the youth level in an attempt to make the game safer. So consider using it as an experimental rule and let us know how it goes.
Yeah, you might recognize that one from Canadian box. So in the Canadian box rules, if the ball's on the ground, you have to play the ball. It's just a safety rule. It's not something that necessarily we're looking to push, but we just want to see if people can have some success with it and if it works.
That's US Lacrosse box rules also, right? No man ball during a loose ball. No man ball is allowed, right?
Yeah, correct, at the youth level.
Okay, points of emphasis for the coming season. We always start with safety. So contact of head and neck in the youth level is always a 2 or 3 minute non-releasable foul. We want to continue. We have been moving the needle in terms of safety according to what we've been hearing from our science and safety committees, and we'd like to continue moving the needle in the right direction. So keep your vigilance up as officials. As coaches, you're also doing an excellent job in trying to train your players to avoid that high contact. So let's keep the good work going, and let's keep moving the needle in the right direction. Also be well aware of checks on a defenseless player, a player in a defenseless position. He may be reaching for a high pass or scoop or bent down to scoop up a loose ball. Body contact with a defenseless player always results in a 2 or 3 minute non-releasable penalty. In the case of targeting, and we define targeting as a player taking intentional aim at either an opponent's head or neck, or taking intentional aim at a player in a defenseless position. At all levels of youth play, 14U and all the way down, targeting is an automatic ejection. 3 minute foul, non-releasable, and an automatic ejection. So whether he targets a player with a cross check or a high body check to the head or neck, or whether, in your opinion, in the official's opinion, a defensive player intentionally targets a player who's in a defenseless position, those are 3 minute non-releasable ejection penalties. No optional ejection, it's automatic.
And interestingly enough, we're hearing that call being made even in the major football games today. Targeting. So it's across the board, and we got to make sure that we get it out of our game.
David, we had one question come in related to our experimental rules and specifically the misconduct fouls. And they want to know, do the misconduct fouls count towards or as personal fouls in someone fouling out?
They do not. If they did, you would have fouled the player out on his first one, because those are 5 minute penalties. So that does not count towards fouling out time. That's a good question.
Very good.
Okay, you can see from the rule change with the quick restart, pace of play is going to be a point of emphasis this year. We'd like to get play started as quickly as possible. let's make sure that we as officials are in position and ready for the restart. But we'd like to start play quickly so that we do not disadvantage a player or a team that's entitled to the ball after a violation. Remember that play can restart in such cases with the defensive player within 5 yards of the ball carrier, and that defensive player has two obligations. That's to step aside and allow a clear path to the goal, and not to engage the ball carrier until he's allowed a 5-yard separation between himself and the ball. And let's, again, continue to pay attention to being consistent and enforcing the stalling rules. If a team is not going to the goal, it's our responsibility as officials to make sure that we put the stalling warning on and make sure they're playing within the offensive, in the attack goal area.
Another question came, David, related to targeting. Has there been any discussion at the federation or at the youth level about a specific signal when someone commits a targeting foul?
Yes, we have. I don't think we've come up with one, have we, Walt?
I don't think we have.
Football has one, I guess. Is that something that we would consider?
Yeah, we welcome your suggestions. Draw a diagram, take a picture, send it to us, and maybe we'll put it into effect next year. We did not come up with something. Okay, let's keep in mind we've introduced last year that effective in 2021, that's not this coming season, but next season, all goalkeepers are required to wear chest protectors that have met the NOCSE standard, the new NOCSE standard that prevents commotio cordis. So some of these are coming out now. You'll see some of these chest protectors that are coming out onto the marketplace now. They are not required for 2020. For this coming season, they are required for the 2021 next season. So we're just giving plenty of warning so that teams are aware that their goalkeepers must have this new NOCSE standard chest protector for 2021. The following year, 2022, this is 2 years in the future now, all field players, that is non-goalkeepers, must wear shoulder pads that also meet this new NOCSE ND200 spec. And what you'll see are shoulder pads that have an extended pad area, a hard shelled pad that covers the heart silhouette to help prevent commotio cordis injuries. These are, I think, just starting to be manufactured now. I haven't seen any of them yet. Rick, do you know if any of these are out yet?
Yeah, Cascade, Maverick, STX, and Warrior all have products which are currently available for sale. And one of the most important things to note is in the upper right-hand corner, you see a symbol there. That symbol appears, I think, at least 2 or 3 times on most of the pads that I've seen on the product labeling and on the product themselves. And that's something which is permanently on there. So that's a way you would want to identify the pads. And then David and Walt, can you just go over, I guess, the way that this is going to be checked by coaches and officials during pre-games?
Yeah, we're not lifting up their game jersey to check their pads. So this is going to be done with the coach's certification. So it's on the coaches to be well aware to certify that their players are equipped accordingly, and that they're instructed how to wear it and such. It's not like a helmet. The helmet, the sticker is more visible, and that we can see, but the other equipment is going to be the responsibility at this point in time, at least. It's going to be held to the coach's certification. And down the road, I mean, helmets do have to go in most school situations under recertification. I don't believe that this equipment will fall under that. So that question does come up, but in youth, it's probably not a question that schools are bringing forward. So that's the way we're doing it at this point in time. It's up to the coach to certify.
Okay, we're going to give you here a brief list of some differences between the U.S. Lacrosse youth rules and the Federation high school rules. The bigger differences. At the youth level, that's 14 and U and all the way down, no takeout body checks are allowed. So again, that's defined as a player that delivers a body check with the intent to put his opponent on the ground. At the youth level, all the way down, from 14U and all the way down, all targeting fouls, so this is intentionally targeting the head and neck of a player or intentionally targeting an opponent in a defenseless position, all of those fouls result in an automatic ejection, where at the Federation level, they're 3-minute fouls, but the ejection is optional. At the youth level, 3 personal fouls is a foul out. 3 personal fouls or 5 minutes of personal foul time is a foul out. At the Federation level, it takes 5 personal fouls to foul out. Or is it just 5 minutes? It's 5 minutes of personal foul time, right? Well,
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So 3 personal fouls at the youth level and a player's fouled out of the game. It's not an ejection. He can come back for the next game. It's not handled as an ejection. It's just a foul out and he's done for the day. At the youth level, all player contact must be within 3 yards of a loose ball versus 5 yards of a loose ball at the Federation. And keep in mind, at 14U and down, all one-handed stick checks are considered to be slashes. And we want that enforced. That's a safety issue as well as it's just a lousy way to play defense.
Before we get to questions, Rick, I want to just point out that online in the youth rule book, the U.S. Lacrosse rules book, does have in the back page a nice breakdown of all the rules for 8, 10, 12, and 14. And they are set up on a page so that I don't know if you can see this at all, but they're very small. And I print them out and they'll fold so that I'll have the rules for all the different levels, and they can be laminated, folded up, and put in your pocket. So when you're officiating and you're moving from one field to the other, and there's a different age level, you can cross-reference quickly for any rule differences that there might be. So it's a pretty good reference guide, and it covers a number of different topics for the referee to be concerned with. And there are various spots in the rule book. Pages 6 and 7 are important to note. 6 gives you all the rule changes. 7 gives you all the points, the reference points. Page 9 talks about the overview for U8. You jump to page 23. That shows you the difference between 8 and 10. On page 37, it identifies the differences between ages 10 and 12. And page 52, the differences again are emphasized for 12 and 14. Obviously, they're pretty much the same, but again, it's a good review. So 9, 23, 37, and 52, for those taking notes, those are the pages that you want to get a quick overview for each of the levels. The last page of the book gives you a nice chart that you can print out and have laminated and put it in your pocket.
Yeah, what Walt's talking about is as your players, or I guess coaches, transition from level to level as they rise up, some rules change, and what we did as the rules committee is indicate what those major rule changes are from year to year. So when you go from no contact to body contact, we let you know that. When you go to 7-on-7 to full 10-on-10, those are things we note as well. So we're going to stick on here for a couple more minutes. That should do it for tonight. If you have some specific questions, please hang on, ask them, and we'll get to them. I've been answering some of you individually, but if there's something that I feel it's good for the benefit of the group, I'll go ahead and say it out loud. So thank you again for the presentation. For those of you that are interested, this presentation will be online and in the US Lacrosse website in a few weeks. We just got to go over it, fine tune it a little bit, and then we'll also be sharing the slide decks as well. So keep an eye on that if you are a US Lacrosse official or a youth association. This will be mailed out specifically to you by your regional managers, or if you're an official, it'll be in the officials library. So thank you very much. Again, Walt, David, and Walt, I want to thank you for your time, and good luck, everybody, this season. Again, if you have any questions, just
Thanks
hang
for
on.
attending. Our pleasure.
David, I guess one of the questions was, I guess in this year's rule book, we indicated that you should do stick checks at the 12 and 14U level, and they just want to reiterate how many stick checks should they be doing, what's mandatory for officials, and I guess is that something we want to consider putting in there, the number of stick checks, or is that?
I think what we talked about was 4 checks. That's 2 checks per half per team, like we do at the high school level. I think that's a recommended level. You know, I think what we're looking for is just let's start the process of getting the random stick checks out there. So even if you do 1 per team per half, that's a start. I think ideally we're looking for maybe 1 per team per quarter. So 2 per half, 4 per game. But 1 per half would be a good start. You agree, Walt?
Absolutely. We're not trying to overdo it here, but we want everybody to get in the idea that, you know, proper sticks are important. Referees are checking, and it's a good training procedure for reps as well as they come up the line working through youth games.
Next question, they would like you to go over again the quick restart rule and how it does not apply at the 8 and 10U level and what you're doing at those levels. And then again, what you're doing at the 12 and 14U level. Can you just reiterate some of those points?
Okay. So again, at the 12 and 14U level, on a violation or a quick restart coming off of an end line, we're not talking about coming out of a timeout now, but and we're not going to do this when we do a restart and move the ball 5 yards away from the substitution area. But on a quick restart after, say, a face-off violation, a warding violation, or a crease violation, we're going to allow the offensive player to pick up the ball. And if the officials are ready, we're going to give him a quick whistle. None of his teammates may be within 5 yards of him on the restart, but if there is a defensive player there, we don't have to wait or give that defensive player a 5 count. We don't have to wait for him to be 5 yards away before the restart. If the team that's entitled to the ball is ready for a quick restart, they're entitled to it, and we're going to give it to them. The defensive player picks up 2 obligations here. Number 1, he must step out of the way and allow the ball carrier a direct path to the ball carrier's goal. And number 2, he must allow at least a 5-yard separation between himself and the ball carrier before he engages. And again, this applies only to 12 and 14U. It does not apply to 8 and 10.
And can you explain last year's rule, which is effectively what we're doing at 8U and 10U? You still need to get 5 yards.
So what we're doing from last year? So what we do at 8 and 10U now?
Yes, just explain what that is for people who don't know.
So at the younger levels, on any restart, whether it's off a violation or coming out of a timeout or even an initial start after a goal, all players, including defenders, must be at least 5 yards away from the ball carrier at the time you blow the whistle. So we step in there, we make sure all players have given a 5-yard distance, and then we blow the ball in.
You know, Dave, you mentioned the other night about procedure you learned by officiating in the box, by showing the ball on a restart to the goalie and calling it out and letting the keeper know where you're restarting, who has the ball. And Why don't you say something about that? There you go.
Here we are, goalie. So I learned this in box because too many times I saw a play restarted with 2 balls on the field, and that's a mess. So the official grabs the ball on a restart. Now, on a quick one, a face-off violation, the player is going to pick up the ball. But
Right.
when we're coming off a timeout or coming off announcing a time-serving penalty, for instance, where the opportunity is there for 2 different players to pick up a ball, I make sure I have a ball in my hand before starting. I show it to the goalie, show it to the team. Here we are, blue. Here we go, white. And I even toss it to him so that it's clear to everyone who's starting with the ball. And at this point, at this type of restart, we're making sure no players within 5 yards of the ball carrier. There's no way to start with a hidden ball trick unless they come together after the whistle, which they're allowed to do, but they're not going to do it right off of the whistle, as we've seen in some of the videos. It happened in an Albany game last year, actually, on TV. That video's been making the rounds. So and Sean Murphy mentioned this at a seminar this past weekend. It's just a good practice to handle the ball before a restart when we're not talking about the quick restart and the player wants to pick it up and run. Handle the ball, show the ball, make sure it's clear whose stick it's in, and nobody else is within 5 yards of them when you start the restart. Thanks, Walt.
Okay, I have another question. The goalie has 1 foot in the crease, clamps the ball outside of the crease, and he's dragging it toward the crease. Is that considered a goalie in possession of the ball, or is that ball still considered loose and you can check the goalie stick?
It's a loose ball, and as long as the stick and the ball are outside of the crease and the ball is not in the stick, the goalie stick is subject to being checked. You agree, Walt?
That's the rule. I'm aware also that certain areas play when the goalie clamps it, that they consider that as being possession and nobody can play them. But outside on that particular play, it is subject to being checked.
Next question. So it looks like some people are having a little bit of trouble with. They think that you have to either A, give the player a direct path to the goal, regardless of what the distance is, and then B, be 5 yards away. They're having a little difficulty with the fact that if they're more than 5 yards away, do they have to worry about anything at all?
No, they don't. If they're more than 5 yards away on the restart, they can play them right away, and they don't have to give them a clear shot to the goal.
So theoretically, if somebody's standing between the midi and the goalie, and they're 10 yards away, they're completely fine. They have nothing to worry about.
If they're 5.1 yards away, they have nothing to worry about.
Perfect. Next question, and I can confirm this. They want to know if the current NFHS NCAA specs and the old NFHS specs for heads are still legal, and that's a yes. So basically, it's like you were checking sticks a few years ago at the NFHS level. We only carry about the 10-inch distance, and then it's got to be a minimum of 6 inches. Somebody says that, yeah, one of the questions is the 2020 rule book for U.S. Lacrosse up online? Yes. Is the 2020 NFHS online yet? No. So the U.S. Lacrosse version.
If you have the NFHS rules app, the 2020 rule book, I think, went up yesterday.
Oh, there you go. That's on Apple Store. You got that?
That is, yes.
All right, there you go, Mike.
Show you what it looks like.
Okay. Is there any other questions out there? Probably going to stay on for about another minute here or two. If not, then we're going to head off. So I guess type them out if you can. If not, then we're going to head out in another minute here.
Signing off.
Well, one sec. Here we go. 8U, 10U, one attempted pass to the offensive side, or it doesn't matter. So basically, you have to be attacking the goal, or if you pick up the ball and you pass it backwards to one of your defenders, does that count as the first attempted pass?
It's just one attempted pass. Doesn't have to be forward.
Perfect. And then somebody wants to know if the goalie dragging it with the back of his stick and trying to do a tennis style pickup, is that a violation? The answer is no.
No, we talked about that at one point. I think we sort of introduced that, and we pretty much put the kibosh on it pretty quickly.
Yeah. Okay, that should be it. Well, David, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. Again, this will be posted online in a few weeks. And we're going to take this presentation, tweak it a little bit, and then we're going to be giving it again at LaxCon. So thank you very much. Have a good evening, and good luck in this fall. Or, excuse me, at the end of this fall.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot. See you in Philly.
See you in Philly. Bye.